Hello and welcome to the next of the Shots pod, the second Shots pod of March. And this one is our Calling the Shots pod. In this episode, I'm going to be speaking to Johnny Kelly. If you're not aware of Johnny Kelly, he's an absolutely fabulous animator, live action director, an all-round terrific guy. Also, an Oscar nominee, and sadly didn't win, but looked terrific on the night. I spoke to Johnny prior to the Oscars, so we can't talk about what happened there. But what we do talk about is the Chipotle film, his upbringing in animation, his new home at Riff Raff. Very exciting breaking news there. And all the things that led to him being one of the most incredible and heartfelt animators in this crazy industry. So enjoy. Hello and welcome to Calling the Shots pod, the once a month where we talk to high-flying industry experts about the shots that made up their career. Joining us today is a man who is a director. He is an animator, he's a storyteller, he's the owner of a fantastic moustache, he is an Irishman, he is an Oscar nominee, he is, by the time you listen to this, an Oscar winner, we have no doubt about that. And he's an all-round, absolutely lovely person, Mr. Johnny Kelly. Thanks for joining us, Johnny.
Thanks, Jamie. Very exciting to be here. Thanks for having me.
You are in LA at the moment, prepping for the Oscars.
I am here in Los Angeles. It's quite early in the morning. It's exciting.
I like to think that I am the antithesis of all things Oscars, so I'm glad that I can offer that to you. Have you ever podded before? Is this your first pod? Are you a regular podder?
I have podded a couple of times over the last kind of few months, but yeah, I enjoy it. I listen to a lot.
Good. Well, you are our first guest to the Shots pod, so please forgive us for all sort of mistakes and problems that we may have along the way. I'm just going to introduce you and the listeners to the idea of this particular pod, the Calling the Shots pod. Essentially, we're going to go through shots of your life and career. And I'd love to have your reaction to each one, and we can talk around those. And hopefully it'll give us a snapshot. I don't know, I just made that a little bit up. Snapshot of the man, the legend that is Johnny Kelly. So, to kick off things, what is the opening shot of the story of Johnny Kelly?
I'm trying to work out what genre my life would be. I don't know. I think the moment I always think about is when I came back from summer into third year of art college, and I was feeling a little bit slightly miserable, and I saw this poster on the wall, and it was a rabbit that had been kind of run over, an illustrated rabbit, and it said Image Now needs a new runner, and it said contact Johnny Kelly at such and such a number. And I thought, I knew Image Now. They're a Dublin-based graphic design company. They also do commercials and things like that. And this is like in the year 2000. And I just seeing my name on the poster was like, it's a sign.
Just pure.
So I rang them up and said, can I speak to Johnny Kelly? And they said, who's talking? And I said, Johnny Kelly. And they said, no, sorry, who's talking? Johnny Kelly, ha ha ha, had a bit of a laugh about it. And Johnny Kelly turned out to be this lovely guy who gave me the job because he thought it would be funny to have two Johnny Kellys, which it was for about 5 minutes. And I took a year off college and was a runner, and then junior designer, and then regular middleweight designer, and then went back to college. But that year out was definitely the beginnings of something.
And were you studying animation at that point? What were you studying?
I was studying visual communications. It used to be graphic design, but then they kind of chucked everything into it. So it was illustration, and there was a little bit of animation in there. And I think having that time working in the industry, I kind of recommend it to students if you can do it. I mean, certainly my lecturers thought I would never come back. because no one ever does come back. But it suddenly, everything I was learning academically became wildly relevant. And, from my final year project, I ended up doing an animation because of that experience.
And was that always, prior to that, was that the goal? Did you see yourself as a director, or were you just interested in the visual arts and that's what drew you to that career?
No, I think I went into Image Now working as a graphic designer, initially a runner, but I was doing annual reports and I really liked illustration. But we would get the creative review every month and shots as well, of course. And but I remember coming across two things: Shinola's work. Their kind of music videos for Radiohead were coming out around that time, and also Jeff McFetridge's kind of moving image work that he'd done for some music video stuff. And I think that was just the kind of I really like graphic minimalism, graphic style, Swiss graphic design, all this sort of stuff. And I grew up with Wallace and Gromit, and I'd never seen those two worlds sort of come together. And it was like a revelation that you could actually, like Shinola had these like beautiful illustrations that they're doing in kind of lamp chop music videos, but they were also bringing a really beautiful storytelling skill to it. So that's when I kind of thought, wow, I would love to do something like that.
Okay, well let's go to the next shot of your life, the one that we're calling the big shot. I imagine this is going to be a bit of a leapfrog from the previous one. So what was the moment for you where things sort of leveled up, where everything changed for Johnny Kelly?
Yeah, I think it's when I accidentally became a director. Because I'd gone back, I'd kind of worked, I'd danced around music video stuff and it was great, but I didn't feel like I was ever going to make a living from it. So I'd gone back to working in graphics, and I'd followed my girlfriend, now wife, to London. Spent a year working at a company called MB Studio, working for the Tate, done exhibition design and brochure design. It was really fun, fun work. But I just felt this nagging of, animation and storytelling. Wallace and Gromit screaming in my ears. And so I went back to college. I went to the Royal College of Art, spent 2 years doing a master's there. And my final year project was this sort of emotional exorcism called Procrastination, which I think that was sort of the moment when things shifted, because I'd come into the RCA a little bit overwhelmed by this institution that was, Chris O'Feely and Tracy Emin and David Hockney, all these, they continually remind you as if there's not enough pressure that you're in the footsteps of these people. And I'm a kind of a people pleaser. So I was like, I need to do work that feels like it's from the RCA, So I was making kind of, I was, for my final year project, I was going to make this project about where I took recordings of that my dad had recorded in the 50s, and I was going to do these black and white drawings that were really bringing these recordings to life. It would have been beautiful, but it was very much like I was just trying to fit in the mold rather than do my own thing. I was trying to kind of blend in, and at a certain point, I just had like little synapse. I was like, this is not me. This is not coming from me. This is me trying to make something that I feel like I should be making at the RCA rather than something that's coming from me. So like 4 months before we had to hand it in, I was like, I'm sorry, I want to instead of making one film, I'm going to make dozens of films about procrastination. And so I started just making all these little 30 seconds, 1 minute things, 10-second things, however long that it felt like they should be. And each one was procrastination is XYZ. It was like a little definition of it. And this is back in like 2007. And I was animating it all myself. I got a friend to do kind of voiceover. And once I'd done about 20 of them, it suddenly felt like, hang on, these work well together, even though they look completely different. And it became this kind of weird Frankenstein film that suddenly, when it went to the exhibition, people saw me as a director, and I'd never used the word director. I'd never really had an ambition to be a director. I just wanted to animate and make work. But then, weirdly, I'd made this thing that suddenly people perceived, like they saw a voice in it.
In itself, it is very well observed, and it's also quite funny in the way that it sort of pinpoints things that people see about themselves. Did you see yourself as being funny? Did you see yourself as did you see it as a comic piece when you were putting it together?
Yeah, I think it's that thing of using kind of comedy to allow you to dig a little bit deeper emotionally, you know, and one helps the other. You know, you can land a joke and then scratch a bit deeper. I don't think I'm necessarily, I can't own the room I'm not clinking my glass and telling stories at parties. But I do it my own way through animation.
You just do a more painstaking approach to making people laugh. It's not the instant gag, yeah. It's the stop motion that will take four months to finish. Yeah. So the next shot we've got in our list here is the cheap shot. So was there a moment for you that things didn't sort of play fair in your experience, or it's the first moment you kind of felt this isn't always going to be as easy as I hoped it would?
So Procrastination was 18 years ago, and 19 years ago now. Since then, I've been directing commercials, and it's littered with disappointment, you know. And so, but I do kind of love it still, you know. You just have to roll with it, and there's definitely been continual curveballs. Like I won't mention the client, but you know, there's one particular tech company who we spent a year making a project with a lovely team, and then at the end of that year, they took it and they just put it on a high shelf, or maybe it was like, I don't know, that bit at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where it's like in their warehouse, and then I have to turn around to the team and be like, oh, look, I'm really sorry, but you can't ever show this to anyone. This didn't happen. It's a bit mad. And then the weird thing was 4 years later, the exact same client got back to us with the exact same brief and got us to make a new campaign around the same thing, and the exact same thing happened. And it was total severance, the whole thing. But those moments are just, they orient you, you know? They create an incredible amount of energy that you then have to be like, okay, what am I going to do with this? I'm going to question what I'm doing with my life, and then reprioritize. And it sharpens your instincts a bit.
On the flip side of that, we can't have an interview without talking about the Chipotle work, which I think won everything. Is there anything it didn't win? I think it won everything. And obviously that piece, incredibly well regarded, won a couple of Grand Prix in Cannes the year that it was entered. Did the making of something like that feel different for you? Did that feel like you were working towards something that was truly special?
Yeah, I mean, when we were making that, it is mad. It did win everything, but when we were making it, it was a web video. It was never, the idea was that you would go into your Chipotle store and the manager would give you a card that you'd scratch, and then you'd be able to type that into your internet browser and watch the film. So when we were making it, was like, how many people are actually going to do this? It's going to be like, 30 people in Wisconsin.
The exact length of a burrito. Is that how you were timed out, that thing?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all I knew was that it was, when I was making it, I had been in a bit of a rut. I was like the paper animation guy. I had been for about 3 years. And everything I had made something I was really proud of in paper stop motion, which I had never seen before at the time. And then suddenly loads of other people said, can you do this in paper, that in paper? And suddenly it was like, Exxon want this in paper or whatever. And so when Chipotle came in, it was a paper brief. And And I said, that's lovely, but if I can do a slight bait and switch and say, okay, it's not, paper, it doesn't need to be in paper, let's try something new. And so for me, it was really exciting because it was like, I'd never done physical stop motion puppets, like that. And so I was just excited that it was a chance to grow. And so, yeah, it did feel special, but it had no idea. We certainly weren't talking about awards. I think there is also naturally as a director that, you have to be a chameleon. Smith and Folks, I remember saying that in some early talk when I was a student. They said you have to be a chameleon if you want to be a commercials director. And I think that also aligns with just how I want to be as an artist, is just try and put yourself in uncomfortable positions each time and challenge yourself. So how that kind of manifested itself was the next project I did after Chipotle was designing a playground for Kew Gardens. And it was really fun. It was based around food, so you'd slide down a giant pea pod, and it was making stuff physically on a grand scale. But I remember chatting to James Allen from Time Based Arts afterwards, around that time, and he was like, "Oh, so what are you working on next?" And I said, "Oh, I'm designing a playground." And he was like, "Oh my God, that would be my absolute worst nightmare if I was running Nexus and my director had just won 2 Grand Prix and went off to design playgrounds." So it's that slight, boop, 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 self-destruct button, and of course, part of me did kind of wonder if I had made it and suddenly all these doors would open, and they don't. Like people, it's lovely and people really connected to the film, but equally it's also like it's a giant box people put you in, for that kind of work, and I still had to pitch on the stuff that I wanted to do that wasn't copies of that, to try and keep growing.
Do you think that deep down was there a psychological reason where you thought, if I don't do a stop motion animation, if I make a playground, that cannot be compared to the thing that just won all of the awards, and therefore I can't be seen as not following up?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite, to take the kind of slightly wanky parallel of musicians, my favorite musicians are ones that you love one album and then they make another album that just completely throws you and like, what on earth? But then after 15, 20 listens, you're like, oh my God, this is incredible, and I just didn't understand it. So that would be the dream for me, is like, I've been in that situation where with the paper stuff, where I was repeating myself and I could just see my career funneling into this like void. And I didn't want, no one wants to funnel into a void.
A paper funnel into a void sounds awful, but but then you
beautiful.
Created a funnel for children in a way with the slide. So it's all interconnected.
A funnel for children sounds slightly questionable, but yeah.
Yeah, fair. We can cut that bit out. Can we?
Child catcher.
Right. Okay, so to be honest, I think the long shot may well have been this child's playground. But is there anything else? So the next thing we've got is a long shot, like a gamble that you may have made, potentially within the industry, or maybe in short form, or in like the film that you've put is in the Oscars at the moment.
It's a balance, isn't it, of feeling, and life generally is comfort and discomfort. And, Nexus, I had been there for 18 years and they made me who I am commercially and were so supportive. But after 18 years, I just felt like it changed, which is why I'm at Riff Raff now. So that's definitely, maybe, it's too early to say if that was a good idea. But I'm certainly delighted to be there. And comedy, I haven't done, you mentioned procrastination is comedy, but I don't, since Chipotle was so big, people don't see me as a comedy guy. And you're right, this short film, Retirement Plan, was an opportunity to try some comedy and play with the timings. the editing, that was just such a joy. But it was also like lowering the stakes. It's 100 shots in 7 minutes, so we knew it couldn't be stop frame animation because I'd still be making it now. And I just wanted a way to get from the script, which I wrote with Tara Lawal, an incredible writer and also the CCO of Rethink in the US, and an old pal, just to try and capture the spontaneity of a script as quickly as possible, get it to screen as quickly as possible. And so that's what I'm kind of trying to do, and that's what the goal is with Riff Raff, is to do a little bit more comedy and live action, and let's see how that works out.
Well, certainly an edgy choice for Riff Raff, so we look forward to seeing more from there. Well, we can't leave the Oscar-nominated film Retirement Plan alone just with that single bit of conversation there. Tell us a little bit about the journey of that film, when from the initial, I'm guessing, festival launches, or was it through the New Yorker that it was originally made? Tell us about the genesis of it in terms of putting it out there. Yeah,
it's funny, Tara and I wrote it on a Google spreadsheet together. It started out as a kind of a panic attack. It actually, the very initial spark of it hit me on the way back from the British Arrows. I'd flown over. Chipotle 2 had been nominated and lost, which is fine. It's not about the winning. But I was a little bit hungover at like 6:30 on a Ryanair flight from London to Dublin, and I thought I'll try and do something productive. I'll reply to some emails, and I open up my email and I see like 4,000 flagged emails, and then that started me thinking, spiraling about all the lists in my life, all the films on my Netflix queue, or all the songs on my to listen to on Spotify, and if I join them all up, like when on earth would I have time to actually clear any of these lists? Maybe in retirement. And so the film is this guy talking about all the things he wants to do when he retires, and it starts off sort of, I will learn languages, I will learn the names of trees, and then just like for me, it sort of spirals towards the end. We made it sort of me and Tara to make ourselves laugh, and like 2 animators working on it. It was a very small team, and at every stage of this Oscar shenanigans, it's never been predicted to go on, by all these prediction websites, and similarly now we're nominated. The Oscars is on Sunday, and we're not predicted to win. So I'm kind of just enjoying the ride, and it is a mad ride. Like the other night, I was sitting beside for the dinner between the director of K-pop Demon Hunters on one side, and then on the other side it was Domi Shi, who directed Turning Red, Elio, and won an Oscar for Bao, and they're both really nice and Canadian.
Oh, wow. Was it exclusively a table of animators? Is that
it was?
Did they put you all together?
Yeah, they tend to. I wonder why that. No, it was actually.
You're just moving a bread roll slowly across the table and taking photos.
Yeah, it was a dinner at the Academy Museum, and so it was all the nominees for shorts and features. So there's people from Zootopia and all the other films as well. It was fun, but it's very surreal.
Tell us a little bit about, like you say, that it hasn't necessarily been at the top of the prediction list to go through to the different stages. So what was it like when they were being announced, when the Oscars were being announced, or the nominees were being announced?
Yeah, I mean, I was in my kitchen on Zoom, and we, with the whole crew, we just sort of recorded it because we thought we were told to by our PR company. But the reaction, like, it's funny, you see other teams and they're like a whole room of people screaming, jumping up and down, and it's a lovely, joyous thing. But we're kind of like, oh, that's brilliant, great, just stick the kettle on. Someone said it was the most Irish reaction to an Oscar nomination.
You didn't start spiraling into lists of like, oh, now I need to get a tuxedo, and now I need to.
No, absolutely. That's 100%, Jamie. That's it. I suddenly start thinking about the logistics, which is bad. I'm trying to be present because people keep asking, "How are you feeling? You must be feeling amazing." And it's like, you don't. I don't know. I do feel. I'm not. I don't know how I feel actually. Ask me in a month's time. But I'm trying to kind of enjoy it. Steven Spielberg told my producer at the nominees lunch that he'd seen the film and loved it. Apparently.
Oh. So ET2 is the next thing that you're pitching for, or maybe you don't even need to pitch. Don't need to pitch anymore, Johnny. That's the thing.
No, just put a backwards baseball cap on him. It's good. He's done.
Okay, cool. Well, we've covered the missed shot there.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about we've talked about moments in your life. Let's talk about people maybe or places. So we've got one called the one shot, the oneer. Is there a defining person or a project or a place that has defined you as a filmmaker?
Yeah. I mean, I was in London for 15 years, so that was incredible, and I really miss it. I love Dublin as well, where we moved back to, my own home. But definitely that was sort of foundational. I think before I moved to London, in Image Now, that company, I worked with someone called Scott Burnett. And I had done little bits of like interning here and there up to that point. Like I went with my equivalent of GCSE portfolio when I was 16, and cold knocked on about 30 graphic design companies and said, can you give me a job for experience over the holidays? So I was that kind of really annoying teenager. But Scott was Scottish, and he is still Scottish. He's still alive, and he now runs a company called Wove. Him and Johnny Kelly actually. But I just remember like we'd get a brief in, and I was used to unquestionably kind of just following it, whereas Scott was someone that would just like take the brief and completely pull it apart, ask the client, questions from the other end of their business perspective, and just like really intelligently in a complex way, kind of take a step back and think about it, and often completely challenge people. And I found that really, I mean, maybe that's a Scottish thing a little bit. It's like a little bit more not afraid of a tiny bit of confrontation, or it feeling a little bit uncomfortable. He's a lovely guy, really funny, but he definitely wasn't afraid to sort of gently rattle cages. And things like he would not wait for stuff to come in. So when I arrived, they had just sent a proposal off to MTV Europe, which in 2000 was kind of the thing, and said, it was just a beautiful little package of their work, and it was kind of spec brochure of branding kind of. And sure enough, MTV said, come on over and redesign 2 of our channels. And that was completely unheard of for like an Irish graphic design company. And before I knew it, even though I was still pretty much an intern, I was flying to London for the second time ever, and going to Camden for a meeting at MTV, and I helped launch MTV Hits, which was their kind of pop channel around that time. And yeah, just seeing someone going for it in a lovely but ambitious way was very motivating, for sure.
Right, so the next shot we're going to talk about, and you're not allowed to choose paper for this, paper animation, paper-based animation, is we're calling it the kill shot. So is there a thing or a problem that occurs within the industry, and we can talk about the film industry as a whole, doesn't have to be the commercial filmmaking industry, that you wish it would just be got rid of?
Well, this is a tricky one. In no way is this going to happen. And it's also slightly controversial. It's definitely a hot topic. But if I could click my fingers and generative AI could disappear, that wouldn't make me displeased. But I say that, I am one of those people that you describe as either a nerd or an early adopter. I always jump on to whatever the newest thing is. And yeah, AI just makes me a little bit queasy. And only because I think I spent, my teenage years drawing in my room and trying to get better at craft. And I know for a fact that I would not be doing that now. And that makes me a little bit sad. But equally, I don't think it's going anywhere, and I don't think you can. There's exciting possibilities as well, certainly for accelerated learning. Even if I have a software problem, I use the text thing sometimes for learning, because instead of wading through 5 YouTubes to find out how to do something in After Effects, it'll give it to you in 3 bullet points. And so that efficiency is very alluring. I haven't played much with generative stuff just because for me the process of doing it is where the kind of the soul comes into it. And but I heard a quote recently, Charlie Chaplin talking about when they went from sound, from silent to sound, and he said, just when we were getting it right, it was over. And I mean, I do feel that a little bit. It's like, I feel like, particularly with Retirement Plan, I feel like I finally cracked how I want to work. And now in 5 years' time, God knows where it's going to be. But I know the human spirit will prevail, and I'm sure someone will make something really heartbreaking and with so much soul in AI that, people will accept that it is a tool. But I'm a little bit conflicted at the moment.
Well, don't let puppets die, Johnny, because I'm a big puppet guy, and if all puppets go AI, I just don't know what I can do with myself on that day. So, as long as you and I are keeping the puppet dream alive, I think we'll be safe. It's good.
Yeah.
Let's have a parting shot. So the parting shot is potentially something that maybe you wish you knew early doors, or for people coming into the industry, what advice you'd give.
Yeah, I think something I wish I had done earlier, I've always done a little bit, but not properly, is organize your ideas. And I say this sometimes when I speak to students, is just become your own archive. And that can be an archive for somewhere you collect all your visual ideas, or all your references. Keep track of songs you like. An example of a Retirement Plan, we used an existing piece of music by John Carroll Kirby. I wouldn't have used that or thought of it unless I didn't have a playlist that was like, this could be used for soundtrack, And when you're on a pitch, if you're pitching commercially and you suddenly got 3 days, 4 days to do something, or, pitching on a film or, non-commercial idea, you're sometimes scrambling around, and you it's so helpful to have your own database. And like one thing I've started using recently is like an app, like a diary app. I use Diarium, and I did see that. Some ideas. And
Johnny, I did say no sponsorship allowed in this call. We need to confirm that with the lawyers. Sorry.
Yes. No, other diary apps are available. There's a load of them actually, and they sync across your machines. And yeah, what I love about it is that you can throw in an idea, and then you can tag it with more than one project. Or even you can tag it with a medium, or you can technique, or you can tag it with a person, and so it becomes this non-linear database that you can add to and refer back to, rather than like a notes file that you'll never get to the bottom of. So I think that is something I wish I'd done earlier, and what I would suggest to people, because I think it also helps you tune into what you like, you know. And when you look back at it, you're scrolling through. It kind of it's a mirror for the kind of things you want to do. For
I'm
sure.
not going to lie, I'm seeing a through line here, a Johnny Kelly through line, which is, you know, from procrastination to the Oscar success of like spiraling because of too many lists, to the advice of organising your list so everything can come back. I see 10 years time self-help coach Johnny Kelly, and you're going to have to think of a new one, because am I right in saying that you're Johnny Kelly when you're a commercial filmmaker, John Kelly when you're being Oscar nominated, so JK maybe a JK
Yes.
Host?
I did make a comics as Jack Kelly as well. I don't know. I don't know who I am anymore, really. So
you could even use Kelly as a first if you want to just really switch it up. That'd be
just
lovely.
do it. Yeah, go crazy. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, thanks so much for spending time with us, Johnny.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
been a real delight. Everyone who's listening to this is going to hear it after the Oscars, so they will already have contacted you with all of their successes. No, their successes, your successes. Congratulations upon. But I will pre-congratulate you, because I can't wait to see you go up there and collect that little statuette. And even if not, just go over to Spielberg and pitch him some wicked ideas. It'll be great. No, thank you for calling the shots with us today, Johnny.
Oh, thank you so much, Jamie. It was lots of fun.